welcome to Legally Speaking with me, Tarun Nangia. This is a very, very important show that we record today. It is about the 49th Chief Justice of India. And Justice UU Lalit is getting that honor. He's going to be the 49th Chief Justice of India. What are the opportunities for him? Albeit in a short tenure that he has, but we all know that a Chief Justice can do a lot even in a short tenure. He can leave his imprint behind. And that is what we are going to focus on today, and also going to congratulate him because he's one of the rare ones who get this chance to go down in history as the Chief Justice of India. Indeed, a very, very big achievement and honor. And may I introduce you, my panel today. At the outset, I'll welcome Justice Arjun Kumar Sikri, who is India's leading arbitrator. We all know he's a judge at the Singapore International Commercial Court, sitting judge there. He has served as a judge of the Supreme Court of India and Chief Justice of 2 high courts before that. And good to see you again, sir, and looking forward to some interesting interventions from you. I have with me Ryan Karanjawala, who undisputedly is a managing partner of the country's leading litigating law firm at the Supreme Court and the High Court, called Karanjawala and Company. Good to see you again and looking forward to some interesting interventions. I have with me Mohit Saraf, managing partner of Saraf and Partners, one of India's fastest growing law firms. And I think very quick to have hired 200 lawyers in a shortest span that I have seen in my life. Good to see you, Mr. Saraf. And at the outset, Mr. Karanjawala, I remember you have known Justice Lalit at the bar long ago. If I could ask you, this is a very short tenure. In this short tenure, what can be done? And how was he at the bar, frankly speaking? I mean, we would like to know. He was a leading criminal lawyer, we all know.
So let me tell you one thing, Tarun. I not only had the advantage of knowing Justice Lalit and briefing him. My firm used to brief him a lot. In fact, he appeared for us in the Arushi Talwar case also. And I think he also appeared for us in Tarun Tejpal. But I also had the privilege of briefing his father, Justice UU Lalit, who was one of the top criminal lawyers of his time when he was today in the 90s, when he was practicing in the Supreme Court. I remember my erstwhile senior, Praveen Parekh, Praveen Bhai had always told us, he said, if you suddenly get overnight on the next day's board, a 1,000-page criminal appeal, there's only one person to go to, and that is Justice Umesh Lalit, because he will get ready overnight. Justice Umesh Lalit, of course, he practiced on the civil law side as well, but he was really known for his criminal prowess. And he had been Chief Justice Chandrachud, the earlier Chief Justice Chandrachud's junior. So he had learned a lot of his criminal law in that court. Justice Uday Lalit, who will now be taking over as the Chief Justice, did a stint in Bombay, then did a stint with Sohrabji. So obviously he had a wide knowledge of civil law. But he really specialized again. He was a favorite of everyone on the criminal side. As I told you earlier, I had worked with, my firm had worked with him. My younger daughter Niharika had worked with him in the Arushi Talwar case. I think that also he'd appeared for us once or twice in the Tarun Tejpal case. And in fact, when he became a judge, because he was direct appointee from the bar, and he's going to be only the second judge in history to become a Chief Justice after being directly appointed from the bar. When he was directly appointed as a judge, my daughter was totally dismayed. She said, my God, we're losing one of our best counsels. What a pity this is going to be for us. So we've had the good fortune of seeing Justice Lalit both as a judge and as a lawyer. In both areas, he excelled. As a lawyer, as you know, he has been appointed an amicus in so many important matters, including the 2G matter. Now, the question that arises is for a judge of this prowess, what can he do in the short tenure? Or what should he do in the short tenure that is available to him? And how does he best utilize his time? So I had just 2 to 3 suggestions to sort of offer in a sense. One, obviously what every Chief Justice should do, which is work on the vacancies. Fill the vacancies as much as you can. There'll be about 4 vacancies by the time he retires in the Supreme Court itself. He should ensure that all of them get filled as quickly and as smoothly as possible. Something like what Justice Ramana did when he took over and filled some 8-9 vacancies and brought the court up to full strength. The second thing, and this is a bit of a radical thought, but sometimes if you say to yourself, okay, I've got 75 days, what do I do with those 75 days? So perhaps he can decide and say that he will sit as the Chief Justice only in a constitutional court. So every Monday after 2 o'clock, every Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and every Friday after 2 o'clock, just hear constitutional matters. Constitute a constitutional bench. It may not be the same one throughout. So you have 5 judges sitting for hearing 1 or 2 cases, then you change, but he remains a constant factor, sitting and presiding in the Chief Justice's court for the first time as only a constitutional court. The advantage of that is that you then decide very high impact cases in a short period of time, and that's how you maximize the time available to you. The third thing he can do, and this I think all Chief Justices should do, is on the issues which are contentious, set down a protocol which is long-lasting. For example, mentioning. How much mentioning should be allowed? When should the mentioning be done? Hybrid. When does hybrid work? When does hybrid not work? It's best that, say, the next 3-4 Chief Justices in order sit together, come to a working solution, and then implement it from A to Z. So when he hands over the baton to Justice Chandrachud, at least on these issues, how much mentioning, when, what, where, hybrid, when should hybrid be allowed, when should hybrid not be allowed, all these issues then get settled, and both the litigant and the lawyers and the judges know that, well, this is going to be the conventional mode of functioning. If he can get these 2-3 things done, then I think he would have achieved a lot.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that input with us. I'll go to Justice Arjun Kumar Sikri. So you've been on the bench. You have seen this live. And now I think I can count on you as one of the busiest arbitrators in India. And, the earlier one of the shows that I was doing, they say that they also look forward to Justice UU Lalit entering this arena after his stint in arbitrations. So as an aside, your first comment on his opportunity to be the Chief Justice of India, and how can he leave an imprint? I remember reading an article by Amitabh Kant 4 days ago where he mentioned your Shiv Shakti Sugar Mills judgment in that article. And it shows that, once you leave your imprint with your judgment, it can be cited years later praising it. So can you share with us the kind of opportunity that Justice Lalit has got?
Yeah, thank you, Tarun, and thank you for inviting me on this program, which really is not only very timely within few days of a couple of days of his warrants having signed by the president, and you have arranged this program. So I congratulate you for that. But let me first congratulate Justice Lalit, who is going to be the next Chief Justice of India. And as Ryan has rightly pointed out, second Chief Justice of India from Bar. And I take pride in saying that the first Chief Justice was my namesake, Justice Sikri. And so second Justice Lalit. So that really gives me a pleasure of a different kind as well, in addition to, congratulating him. And so therefore, I feel pride in what he's going to achieve. And secondly, let me just, before coming to your question, go a little, backward, what Ryan also mentioned about his outstanding qualities as a lawyer, because that would be necessary to at least predict as what he can do as Chief Justice, even during short tenure. I have found him as an ace lawyer, no doubt about it, who was very, very, he would concentrate on his brief, what is to be argued, and would not do or talk anything which is nonsense, of very cool disposition. And he would be unruffled in any situation, would coolly argue his case with calm, will never lose his calm. And he believed in true karma as a lawyer. Never bothered about what is going to be the result. But it was a different thing when you work with such concentration, with such devotion. Mostly the benefits are also accrued. I mean, the God also would give you the rewards for that. But I tell you, one of my friends, which nobody would be knowing, one of my friends who was working as a director in a company which had its hotels, some hotels, particularly in Rajasthan, and he had gone for to argue the bail application of Salman Khan in Jodhpur. So he had stayed in their hotel, and where the team and that few actors and actresses had come there, or those actors who were naturally supporting Salman as his friends, and my friend was also there in that hotel on that particular day. So he says that I admired when they came back, bail was granted. So he comes back, sits in the dining hall, and at a little distance, the other, all those actors were sitting. In the meantime, Salman Khan comes because he is now released after the bail is granted, and he joins them. They are all celebrating. And this person, he has done his job, coolly sitting on his own table, finishing his lunch. And after the lunch, he just walks away and goes to his room. I mean, he was not bothered that I have got this bail to a celebrity, and now I should go to him, I should join them. So this is kind of composure which he has, and this is a rare quality normally, which I really admire ever since I heard that anecdote. And as Ryan mentioned, another thing, at that time, his father, in those times we used to hear, as a sitting judge in the Delhi High Court also, that the best criminal lawyer about his father. And he succeeded, became one of the best criminal lawyer. Of course, he was not confined to criminal practice alone. He has done so well in other fields also. But he succeeded not as a successor under the Hindu Succession Act, but on his own merits. He succeeded his father and became, he was such a sought after, as Ryan also mentioned, that he was engaged by his firm and likewise by other, and he was traveling throughout. But then these are some of his qualities which made him excellent judge as well, which we have seen in last few years. I have seen him when he appeared as a lawyer before me. I was in judge in Delhi High Court, seldom, but in Supreme Court when I came, he was still a lawyer and he appeared before me a lot. I have observed him as a judge, as my colleague in Supreme Court, and I have observed him as a friend and as a person, because we went out together once in 2018 in a conference in Beijing, which was there. So we were together for about a week. And in one of the National Law School where he was the visitor, and he had invited me. Of course, I was also sitting judge, but as a chief guest in that convocation, when again we had, intimate time which we shared with each other. So therefore, I really admire his qualities from all, and he is very adorable to me. But what now, because of his qualities, now, as you rightly mentioned, I was just when a person in India becomes chief justice, tenure here is very less, but normally otherwise also it is not more than 2 months, 1 year. And even Justice Chandrachud, next person in line who becomes will have of 2 years. So that is treated as very good period. And I remember the present Chief Justice of Singapore Supreme Court, when he became Chief Justice, he was only 52 years of age. He would go up to 65. That is for 13 years as Chief Justice. And there it is extendable also. His predecessor was Chief Justice till the age of 75. So if he goes up to 75, that means he will be Chief Justice of 23 years. And I have observed the kind of reforms which he has brought to Singapore judiciary. But still, of course, even for 60 or 70 or 75 days, etc., hopes are not lost. Ryan has mentioned about some of the things which he can do. I had also almost the same thing in mind, but what I put it in a different way, little different way. One is our country needs judicial reforms in so many ways and on so many fronts. We all know about it. We have been discussing, we have been even working on that, but our approach up to now had been ad hoc. A Chief Justice would come, he will have his own agenda, good agenda, but would work for some time. When he goes, another Chief Justice comes and he forgets what the previous Chief Justice had done, and he he thinks that in my wisdom, these things should be done, and he does. So first thing which we need is that on judicial front, judicial reforms which are required, why not prepare a blueprint of that? And do that. These are, or you say, white paper, and these are the judicial reforms which are required, and have a vision paper for in next 3 years, 4 years, or 5 years what we are going to do. Then, secondly, there are some of the examples which he has said, some administrative matters or even judicial matters which are really, as far as Supreme Court is concerned, which we are concerned with, and the concerns have been raised from time to time. 2 or 3 things which Ryan has mentioned about the, say, mentioning of the matter and about the protocols, etc., COVID, hybrid hearings, and when and how it should be done. So many other matters like this. I give another example of formation of roster by Chief Justice. It has been subject matter of discussion and criticism for quite some time now, for last few years. So what should be done on that front? And then one thing which we know, and the persons who have come from High Courts or Supreme Court and had been Chief Justices, if you see the administrative side in the High Courts functions far better than the administration of the Supreme Court. It is because of the reason. In the High Courts, various committees are formed. Of course, this is done in the Supreme Court also. I'll come to that. Various committees are formed, and I know my experience from as a judge of Delhi High Court and then the Chief Justice of Punjab and Haryana High Court also. Every day in the evening, you will find those committees of 2 or 3 or 4 judges are working on that. I mean, at every day, there may be 30, 35 committees, but 5 or 6 or 7 committees every day would be having meetings and would be discussing, so that it on the one hand reduces the administrative work of the Chief Justice, because when they apply their mind, then and they work on that, then they bring the proposal to the Chief Justice. So Chief Justice is able to carry out all those administrative function or reforms, etc., which are needed, or administrative decisions which are required. So I would say that it needs to be replicated. I mean, of that dimension should come in the Supreme Court also, which there are judges I know in the collegium today who will tell him, although he has not worked as a judge of the High Court or Supreme Court, but then these are the things which are required. And here in Supreme Court, I am very blunt in saying that our registry plays predominant role. It is because judges are not given that importance, and Chief Justice has to depend on registry. And there may be various problems which arise because of that. I need not explain that, but one has to work on that also. That means streamlining the working of the Supreme Court, monitoring of the matters, and listing of urgent matters, like Ryan said about the constitutional matters, etc. Now, how it should be achieved? You can't achieve in 2.5 months. Ryan has already, this was in my mind, which Ryan has already said. That today, I'll take only 1 minute in completing that. What he can do is, we have at least 6 or 7 Chief Justices in succession who are going to be already judges of the Supreme Court. Form a committee of all future Chief Justices, so that whatever is the agenda which he sets in motion or which he prepares is not only in consultation with all who are going to be future Chief Justices and with their consent, so that when everything is on track and on line, then it is carried further. So if he's able to do all this in these 60, 70 days and then set the ball rolling, he may, as you mentioned in the morning, in the beginning, that he may go in the history as one of the finest Chief Justices, even with this short tenure.
Thank you. Thank you so much for those very, very important and very interesting suggestions, and also the explanation that you shared with us. I'll go across to Mohit Saraf, Managing Partner of Saraf and Partners, for his comment. Over to you, Mr. Saraf.
I think after Justice Sikri and Ryan, there's very little for me to add here. But I can tell you what I know is that he was really one. Obviously, all judges are intellectually very strong, but I think he was one intellectual judge who did not carry that heaviness of that intellectual arrogance. I think that is one thing which is very well talked about him. And that's a he's a down to earth, humble person. And as what Ryan said, and as Justice Sikri said, that actually whether he was a lawyer or he was a judge or he's a chief justice, he always was very humble. I would say, apart from that, I think Justice Sikri mentioned about a lot of judicial reform. And Tarun, let me add that FICCI actually appointed a judicial reform committee, of which Justice Sikri and Justice Lokul were the key, and I supported them in drafting that judicial reform paper. And then that committee report was actually submitted to the Prime Minister in 2019 December. So I'll pick up one or two things from the report, which Justice Sikri was the architect of. That one thing which the report suggested was that chief judge, the justice, keeps judicial power within him, but should give up non-judicial power to an appointed officer, like a chief technical officer or chief operating officer. And that person should work under him. What it will do is that if he does that, that the supervision of the judiciary will also be there, but a lot of time, like I remember Justice Sikri was telling us that when he was a judge, Ryan asked him, I said, do you work more now or before? And he said, when I was a judge, I used to work till 10 in the night because he had so much of administrative job. I'm saying that if that administrative job can go to an officer or a CEO or a COO, which is very competent to do that, and who has done running of these companies in multiple places, I would say that will free up our bandwidth of judges for productive judicial work. I think that is one thing, particularly in light of the backlog. The second thing, again, I'll pick up from the report which Justice Sikri was the architect, that on economic policies, because India, you understand that in India, we have very rich people and very, very poor people. And therefore, the trickle down of economic benefit happens if the economy grows. That's how China moved up. That per capita of $2,000 to move to $6,000. And for that purpose, it's very important that the executive and judiciary understand economic policy sitting in a room. And they understand, because what happens is, a lot of times, if you remember, RBI came up with the NPA policy. After 2 years, Supreme Court struck it down. So a lot of time gets wasted. IBC, the same issues are happening. So I would say on economic policies, I'm not talking about fundamental rights and other things. On those policies, if the Chief Justice can actually extend and create a consultative committee with the Prime Minister and try to create that they are able to understand each other well, I would say a lot of time, judicial time, will get saved. And I would say it will have a long-term impact on growth, on productivity, on improving productivity of our people, and also bringing, I would say, a good fortune to them. Because I think we always hear India has a great fortune, great potential, but the potential never gets there. So I would say these are the few things. And because he's humble, because he's down to earth, he does not have an arrogance of or knowledge. And also, the third thing I would say, because he spent so much of, and I think, as Justice Sikri said, he's got like in his blood criminal law. And therefore, I would say the criminal legal system needs a lot of refinement in India. I would say that is again something which he should focus on, because he's been through it. He's been a lawyer, he's been a judge, and I would say that's again and he personally participated in the 2G scam investigation. So I would say that's again an important issue where he should spend some time on improving the criminal delivery system so that the judiciary can be more functional. That's a few things, changes and suggestions.
So we are joined by senior advocate Amit Desai. Of course, when he joined us on the show earlier, he was on his way in his car somewhere in countryside of United Kingdom. And so his connection kept on dropping out. But finally, we've now got him after much request. Good to see you, Mr. Desai.
Thank you very much, as always.
and Justice UU Lalit takes up as the 49th Chief Justice of India, and it's a movement of pride and honor. It's one of the biggest positions one can achieve in this profession, and you'd really go down in history. And that is why I want to ask you. You've seen him over the years, his judgments you've read. Could you share some observations on the judicial philosophy of Justice UU Lalit?
So, Tarun, before I get down to that, I think, this moment, in many ways, if I might say this, is a moment of pride to the criminal law bar of this country. And I'd say that because this is probably the first time that a senior advocate who's essentially practiced in criminal law is now becoming the Chief Justice of India. And I think I could only hope and pray that the criminal justice system, with his experience and knowledge, is going to be in good hands, and hope to see a lot more of progress and development in that area in his days as the Chief Justice. Let me come straight away to the philosophy that we have seen of Justice Lalit in the last 6 or 7 years. And I think in many ways it reflects what the man is and what he was as a practicing lawyer. So I'll touch upon 3 or 4 different heads which I've seen in his judicial pronouncements. I think he's done a lot of death penalty cases. And in the context of death penalty cases, you see a side of him which is more the traditional criminal justice philosophy of retributive punishment, where you want to bring the accused back into society. And his philosophy running through 3 judgments, and one of them, which is very, very important as we see it as a criminal in the realm of criminal law, is he actually rendered a minority judgment on a very important issue as to whether a life imprisonment can be without remission. And he rendered the dissent to say that a life imprisonment must be with remission, because otherwise it's equivalent to a death penalty. So it shows his own mindset about it. He's brought in psychiatric evaluation of those who are being accused in death penalty cases. He's insisted on having a lawyer with at least 10 years standing in a death penalty case. So you see a side of him through those line of cases. The other area that you find in the context of, again, criminal justice is his desire to ensure that the criminal justice system is evidence-based. And because in today's environment, where everything is a media trial, as you understand, every important criminal case has got analyzed and threadbare across channels, print media, social media, etc. But he has taken a view. He says that media trials in the criminal justice system constitute a contempt. So it shows that his desire is to actually have evidence-based cases, emphasizing the need for evidence-based cases so that you ensure that the justice system delivers a decision rendered on only relevant considerations and not ours. So you see that side of him. You then see a side of him in the context of freedom of speech. And that's, again, essential in today's democracy, where he actually, while setting aside and quashing a prosecution of sedition against a very prominent member of your fraternity, Mr. Vinod Dua, and where he analyzed the principles of the freedom of speech while squashing sedition. And sedition is, of course, as you know, a very important issue, because there were PILs pending, and the government itself has now come before the Supreme Court and said they're relooking at the law on sedition. But you saw that, again, that the need to ensure freedom of speech in the context of the criminal justice system, because you can't have the chilling effect of all these kind of cases against those who have a voice of freedom in this country. So you see that part of him again. And then the other part of him, which I see, is, again, his personal liberty needs. So when you see some of his decisions in the context of bail law, he has elevated what is known as a default bail to an Article 21 right, and which is very important, because otherwise it was a statutory right. But over the times, he's appeared in so many cases in relation to once these default bail cases when he was practicing as a lawyer. But he had the opportunity, sitting in the Supreme Court, to actually elevate it to an Article 21 right, which is very, very essential to show how important liberty means to him. And then introduced in one of his judgments a concept which actually is quite novel in India. He says even in the context of arrest, he contemplated a situation of a house arrest. So in exceptional circumstances, enabled a subordinate court to consider remanding an accused to a house arrest. Now, that was unusual in the context of the Indian jurisprudence, but you see this in the Western democracies, but he actually brought that in. So I think in many ways, when you see him through the lens of his judgments in criminal law, which was the area in which he specialized, you see a side of him and his philosophy, which I think is very important, very necessary, and particularly in the din and noise of the what we are listening to in the country over the last few months. I think that is something that gets seen and shown on through his judgments, and therefore, in some ways, I think at least, and this is a different perspective. Of course, he's known very well for all his other branches of law, so it's not to sort of take it away from that. But I'm just giving you a context of the man who was a specialist in criminal law. And I said, and I must make a comment here, which I think is essential, is that I've had the opportunity of working with his father. He was one of the finest criminal law lawyers of the Supreme Court for decades. And Uday, or Justice Lalit, kind of followed in many ways in his footsteps, picked it up, and we have seen the side of him because we've appeared against him, we've appeared with him, and now that you see him sitting up there, I think it's a great moment for the bar.
And because you've known him as a lawyer, one small comment from you, and I think you've told this to me earlier also, that when you have a flourishing practice, it takes a lot to say that I'm now going to accept judgeship and do this duty, because in essence it is a sacrifice. You move on from a very high profile lawyer life, which is very open, to the confines of the judiciary, where of course there are many limitations. What would you like to say about his choosing the judiciary, and of course delving on Justice UU Lalit when he was senior advocate UU Lalit? If you could share something.
So interesting. I think in many ways that's my sense about Justice Lalit as the lawyer, is he was a thorough professional. Okay, he was the kind of person who I suppose in some ways inherited this practice. He'd take his brief. He never wanted endless conferences. He'd read his briefs on his own. He'd spend his night doing his own research. He would occasionally get his juniors to, of course, give him all the material that's there, but he did a lot of work himself. So he was a very industrious kind of a lawyer, and of course, extremely capable and competent. And having, I suppose, I don't know, but coming from a background where his father was also at one point a judge of the Bombay High Court, I think he probably had it in him that he wanted to probably give back in some way to society, because he, as a professional, was more interested in the law than really the practice of the law in that sense. So it was not about money. It was not about the standing as a lawyer that you get in society because you've sort of done well in the society. It's about how you keep contributing to the law. And I think when he got this opportunity, and I think it's a godsend opportunity for the country, he got this opportunity. My sense is that he just, obviously, it came naturally to him to say, I'd rather take this on, and what better than an opportunity to sit in the Supreme Court itself, and all the learnings that you've had over years, the philosophy that you want to bring about, you have the opportunity to do it through the judgment. So I think, it's just Justice Lalit, Justice Uday Lalit, the senior advocate, and Justice Lalit, now the Chief Justice of India, I think is, in a sense, an extension of what he was as a lawyer and what he probably wanted to do. So he was all the time evolving principles of law as he argued. Here he has the ability to actually settle them sitting up there. So that's the sense I have of the man.
Thanks for sharing your, in a sense, observations and your comments on Justice UU Lalit, who now takes on as the 49th Chief Justice of India, a moment of pride and a chance to go down in history, because very few people achieve this position, and that's why we do this show. We wish him the best for his tenure, and sincerely thank you, Senior Advocate Amit Desai, for making time for this important issue. Thank you so very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Tarun.
Thank you so much for sharing all these inputs, and it was indeed a pleasure today to listen to.
I may only say as a parting thing too.
Yes.
One, he has already proved his administrative prowess as chairman of NALSA, National Legal Service Authority, and his work is, commended so much all over India. Many judges, chief justices, and judges of those who are the executive chairman of the State Legal Services Authority, those sitting judges J1, they come many times, they meet and all that, and they all have all praise for him. Other is only, with your permission, I'll say his own, words which he said a few days ago in a function. It is Justice Pratibha Singh. She gives this Cambridge scholarships. So that award function, those who are given that and they go there for studies, and in that he was the chief guest, and I think it happened hardly 2-3 days ago. And what he said that he narrated or recited this Sanskrit shloka, Shateshu Jayate Shur, Sahasteshu Cha Pandita, Vakta Dash Sahasteshu Tata Bhavti Vanava. Means among 100 is born one valorous, among 1,000 is born one intelligent, an orator among 10,000, a true giver may or may not be born. I think what he said applies to him. So, he should try to make maximum use of his own qualities.
Thank you for sharing that shloka and the anecdote with us. It was a pleasure today listening to Justice Sikri as usual. Ryan Karanjawala, Managing Partner, Karanjawala Company, Mohit Saraf, Managing Partner of Saraf and Partners, and Senior Advocate Amit Desai, who also joined us, though he's in a visit to London and around. He made time and joined us. And I appreciate that all of you made time. When yet another Chief Justice of India is taking charge, of course, they go down in history. And as it is always said, judging is like wearing a crown of thorns. You are in a sense will be criticized, but it is something, I mean, it is a sacrifice, a lot of which what people say, you give up your professional, very successful legal career and then do public service. And that is all what we should salute, that he has taken this up as in the spirit of public service, and we look forward to his tenure. Thank you so very much for joining. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
For more such videos, subscribe to the NewsX YouTube channel, hit the bell icon.